So today we're interviewing with Dr. Ernie Shaw, a veteran. And Dr. Ernie Shaw, where are you from and how did you make your way to Houston, Texas?
I'm from Terrell, Texas. Terrell is a small town between Dallas and Shreveport on I-20. And I made my way to Houston via World War II and the Korean War and Tuskegee and Rutgers. And I came to Houston in 1966 from Freestone County, which is a part of one of the counties in Texas.
So what was it like growing up in Terrell, Texas?
My father was a farmer, a tremendous farmer. That's how I became an agriculturist. And he planted crops of corn, cotton, peas, and peanuts, and we had cattle and hogs and chickens and so forth. So I grew up very involved with agriculture. And I became involved with the county extension agent, which I am now. I'm a county agent emeritus through Texas A&M University. And I met a gentleman who was a 4-H leader, and he taught me about developing the head, the hands, and the heart, and the health. I pledged my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands for larger service, my health for better living, for my club, my community, my country, my world. And that's even more so today. It's worldwide. And that's carried me around the country and around the world. Thank you.
Okay. So have you always wanted to be a farmer, or was it something?
I'm a research agronomist. I am an agronomist. That's spelled A-G-R-O-N-O-M-I-S-T. I studied with George Washington Carver at Tuskegee University in Alabama. And that was founded by Booker T. Washington, who had gone to Hampton prior to founding Tuskegee in 1881. And I was awarded the Tuskegee Alumni Merit Award, one of 4 in the country, in 1981. Met my daughter and wife looking on in 1981, during the 100th anniversary of Tuskegee.
Okay. So can you just walk us through your history and just, give out dates, 1945 this, 1940 that, so we can just get a real feel for Dr. Ernie Shaw and your experiences over the years?
Well, I was born, I went to elementary school in 1932 in a place called Terrell, Texas. And my principal was a fellow named W.H. Burnett, B-U-R-N-E-T-T-T. And he had gone to Lincoln over in Pennsylvania. And he was from Waxahachie, Texas. And he came to Terrell in 1900. And I moved to that town in Terrell in 1932. And we were his last class. He died in 1944. And I graduated in 1944 from Burnett High School. And he was instrumental in helping us to comprehend and understand what it was like to be an American. And he taught us about Jefferson and Toussaint Louverture and all the people that were significant even till today in the world.
Okay, so that takes us through 1944. So what did you do after high school?
I went to Shorter College. That's in North Little Rock, Arkansas. And that's, if you, frame of reference for that would be Shorter Flipper Curry. Flipper was the first African American to graduate from West Point. And this college was a junior college, and it was a feeder to Wilberforce, which is in Ohio. And of course, I had signed up for joining the military, and then I got called in the Army. So on April 9th, 1945, and I entered the Air Corps at Fort Sam Houston. That's when I put my hand up and said, I'll swear to follow the mandates of the United States Army, da, da, da. And I stayed there until 1947 when I was discharged.
Okay. So after you discharged, what did you do?
Well, I wanted to continue my education, so I applied for Tuskegee University. So I entered Tuskegee in the spring of 1947, and I was majoring in history, in chemistry, and also agriculture. And that's where I colluded with the Carver program at Tuskegee. And that's why I moved into agriculture as a career and an occupation.
Okay. So what was Tuskegee like? Is it a big university, small university?
Tuskegee has about 3,000 students. Tuskegee is one of the premier universities in America, bar none. I would put it in terms of the African American experience, with Harvard and Yale and Rutgers and whatever schools you want to discover, particularly for the South. And much of that had to do with the influence of Booker T. Washington, and I want to emphasize that. Booker T. Washington. Education in America for people of African descent, without a doubt, be different had it not been for Booker T. Washington. And he, in turn, involved and brought in George Washington Carver, who was a genius, if you will, in the plant sciences, and had graduated from Iowa State. And he brought him to Tuskegee. And he revolutionized the South as we know it. We talk about the whole South as it relates to plants and animals and products. And one of his philosophies was, what a person hears, he might believe. What he sees, he should believe. But what he does himself, he has to believe.
Wow, that's an interesting philosophy. Now, that's from Booker T. Washington or George Washington Carver?
Both,
Both.
as it were. They were, one was an educator and the other was a scientist.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So after Tuskegee, what did you do?
Well, I took a commission as a lieutenant after having been in the Air Corps in World War II as an enlisted man. And I needed some money to continue my education and travel and growth and development. And so I went on short tour of duty in Virginia in order to buy a car, a vehicle. And then I joined I took a job in insurance, as a matter of fact, till I got called back to the service. Because as an officer, you know, I had been in the reserves, and then I just continued that. And once I became an officer, I'm still an officer until today. I'm a first lieutenant in the ROA, which is Reserve Officers Association of America.
And so World War II, and then you served in Korea. So what did you do after you got out the military?
Well, I became a county agent in 1952. 1952 in Fort Riley, Kansas. That's why I was separated. That's when I was last in the military, in 1952. And I really didn't know what I was going to do with myself when I left this military, but I had my fill of it, and I felt like I had done my fair share, and it had been quite an advent. So I decided to get out. And I knew I wanted to go back to college and earn my doctorate degree. So I later went on to Rutgers and took my master's degree at Rutgers and applied for my PhD. But then I came back to Houston, Texas, and entered graduate school at the University of Houston in the counseling education.
Okay, so what year did you get back to Houston?
Not back to Houston. I got to Houston initially in '66.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And so you've been in Houston ever since?
Precisely.
Okay. So now you mentioned a county agent. What exactly does a county agent do?
A county agent is a formal federal, state, county educator. You're at the top level of America with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA. If you had breakfast this morning, you are involved in agriculture. You can take that to bed with you. Because, eating is about food, and food is about eating, and so forth. But I'm saying a county agent helps people to help themselves by helping farmers to grow more productive, more nutritious, more healthy food.
Okay. Now, I know you mentioned that as part of your travels, you've been to Africa. So where did
I
you
lived and worked in Africa. I was at Booker Washington Institute in Kakatoa, Liberia from 1956 to 1960, teaching boys and girls and the country how to utilize the resources of their area.
Okay. And
So
now, how long were you in Liberia?
4 years. I left here in 1956, right after the State Fair in Dallas in October, and I didn't return bag and baggage until 1960 in November.
Okay.
And I taught boys and girls, and many of them. In fact, the president of Liberia today was related to my work in Booker Washington Institute.
Okay. And so that gets you back to, well, from Liberia, did you come straight back to Houston, or did you?
No, I came back to, where did I come back to? I came back to, yeah, I did come back to Houston.
Okay.
But I didn't get a job here. I worked in 3 other counties. I've been a county agent. And a county agent, incidentally, works through the commissioner's court of a county. Every county in the United States has a county agent. Every state in the United States has a county agent. I am a county agent. And I've been a county agent since 19 and the year I just indicated. And of course, the counties I've served in is Angelina, that's Lufkin, that's East Texas. Guadalupe, that's Seguin, that's South Texas, near San Antonio. Milam, which is Central Texas, Waco. Then Freestone, which is East Texas, that's Freestone is Fairfield, Wortham, and Teague. Then I came to Houston, Harris County, which is the largest metropolitan city in our state, in 1966 as Associate County Agent for Harris County, 1966, June.
Okay. And so you've been in Houston ever since?
Precisely.
Okay. What are some of the other organizations that you're involved with around Houston?
Well, I've organized several. The Landowners Association of Texas, LOAT, that's African Americans who own land in this state. The Southwest Trail Riders is one of my creations. They won an award this year in the livestock show. I'm an Omega Lambda Epsilon chapter of Omega Psi Phi since 1948. And I'm an AME, that's African American. That's my religious belief, if you will. AME, African Methodist Episcopal Church.
Okay, so what were some of your duties and responsibilities?
Well, I was the first African American officer to, after President Truman had signed the executive order giving people of African descent equal opportunity under the laws of our country. I volunteered to go to Fort Benning, Georgia, and I took an extensive training for 18 weeks, 17 weeks in Fort Benning to gain my knowledge, skills, and attitude about leading troops in combat, tactics, leadership, organization, and personnel.
Okay. So have you been in any wars, or what was the next stage once you returned to the military?
Well, I was an occupation airman in World War II in the Philippines. I was at Clark Field in Manila, and I had a chance to travel. I went to China and Japan and so forth. But then, when I came back to the service as an officer, that's when I went to Korea as a lieutenant. And now I was the first African American to command white troops in combat in Korea.
Okay.
One of the first.
So what was that like? Were they easy to work with, or were they a challenge, or where it's really just men going to battle together? So it was a different experience.
Well, having been trained by tremendous officers at Tuskegee and Fort Benning and Fort Belvoir and other places and Fort Hood, I knew what my responsibilities were. I knew what the requirements were for me and what I was expected to do and what the men were expected to do. And I had no problems with it. There were challenges, of course, but they weren't out of reality.
So, Dr. Ernie Shaw, when it comes to communications and the importance of communications, what would you say about the importance of communications to the youth?
Well, communications to me meaning being able to share with others what you're about and help them to understand what they're about. And I'm saying we start where people are. And as a communicator, we need to know where the person is in relation to where we are. And rather than try to bring him directly where we are, see where he is and what we can do to help him grow. Learning is a process. Growth is a process. A plant starts as a seed and it goes to a seedling and then it becomes a plant. So I'm saying we can't all of a sudden presume that people are where we are. We have to go where they are. And that's what a teacher is. I'm saying a teacher is a person who has empathy and can get into the perception of the person who they are trying to teach. Calling words is not reading. You have to learn the meaning of it and the exclamation points and what's the tone of your voice and your attitude and disposition. So it's a process. It's a hell of a challenge. But you have to realize that now, if I'm here to help, then I have to put myself aside and kind of go where you are. That's communicating.
And so, during your time that you was in both wars, whether we're talking about World War II or the Korean War, how did you guys spend your pastime? Did you do anything with the arts?
Well, yes, I've been art oriented all my life. I grew up in Terrell, and my parents were involved in art and things that are related to art, which is music and things like that. So we traveled. We went to boxing matches. We went to view things in interesting countries. Things like that.
Okay.
And of course, I was in Africa for 4 years, so I have brought back a considerable amount of art from that country, or that continent, if you will.
So, Dr. Shaw,
Yes.
I noticed that you have a piece of artwork.
Precisely.
So, can you tell us about the history of those?
Yeah, this was a piece I bought in Liberia. Africa is a home of art in the world, if you will, as well as a home of human beings in the world. And of course, I was there for 4 years, and they have tremendous arts and art centers in Africa, and many of the original people are very good at forming and appreciating art. And I bought these and then had them developed for myself and brought them back home with me, and a lot of other pieces. But they are good at carving and everything that relates to art. It almost goes without saying. And you go into the villages and you see that people are doing tremendous things. I mean, every American, African or other descent, should go to Africa and see what the Aboriginal people contributed to our way of life in America, if not in the world, because it's all there. Yeah.
Okay, so what exactly do you have in your hand? Are those?
This is a carving of an elephant's tusk, and I had bought this as a natural person who had killed the elephant in Liberia, and I had it carved into 2 pieces. And this is the part that came out of the elephant's head. This is the tusk of the elephant, and this is part of it that I enjoy. And it's beautiful. It's ivory, and ivory is very expensive, of course.
So I noticed that you have 2 items in your hand. So can you tell us more about those?
Yeah, this is a picture of a cousin of mine, Dr. H. Edison Anderson. He had an earned PhD from Iowa State and Columbia, and he organized the a cappella choir at Prairie View. And he was the first choir director inaugurated by Dr. Evans, who was the then president of Prairie View. And H. Edison Anderson was a tremendous artist, as I indicated, and took his choir over the whole country. Many of the folk who attended Prairie View and lived around the country learned to sing and appreciate art and music in his choir at Prairie View. And on the April of this year, they're going to organize a memorial to him at Prairie View of 2010. Dr. H. Edison Anderson, PhD. Yes. And he traveled like I indicated, and he and his choir would travel the world and travel the country primarily, and moved Prairie View into the mainstream of the whole country as an institution of higher education. H. Edison Anderson, Terrell, Texas. He's my mother's nephew, H. Edison Anderson.
So I noticed you have another item in your possession. What is that?
This is the Booker Washington Institute in Kakatau, Liberia, West Africa. Kakatau is a village town about 30 miles from Monrovia, Liberia, which is the capital of Liberia. And I taught there for 4 years. I taught agriculture, primarily tree crops and agronomy, and helped to initiate a rubber project. Liberia had about a 50,000 acre rubber plantation, and my job and goal was to educate and teach young people how to utilize the resources of their country to make economic advancements. I also did some research on soils and crops and helped to manifest nutrition among the staff at the college.
Dr. Ernie Shaw, can you tell us a little bit more about your personal life, such as have you ever been married?
Yes, I've been married and happily married on 2 occasions, as a matter of fact. I first married in 1951 in Fort Hood, And that's before I went into battle. And her name was Marie, and we had a daughter, my stepdaughter. Her name was Jan, and she incidentally went to Texas Southern University in Houston, and she graduated from my high school in Terrell, Texas, while I was still in Africa with her mother. And then we came back to the United States, and of course I became the county agent in Milam County in Cameron, Texas, and she came to Houston. And we separated and got a decree, if you will, and I remarried in 1964 to Naomi Ellison. Of course, Naomi was a teacher in Port Arthur and had formerly worked another rural county, and we married in 1964. And of course, she became, when I came to Harris County as county agent, she was given an opportunity to work in one of the HISD schools, and she organized the group over at Westbury High School, the Honor Society, and it's still there. And she was in the crossover, quote unquote. That's when the racial integration was first occurring. And of course, I was the county agent in the courthouse in Harris County, and she did a marvelous job, and later became a professor, instructor, if you will, at Texas Southern University, where she taught English. Tremendous English teacher. She had traveled in the country and gone to Harvard and Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, and just made tremendous contributions to this county and the state of Texas and the United States, and was my wife. And of course, we had one daughter. Her name was Michelle. She first went to Tuskegee, and then she graduated from Texas Southern in '86, and she works for Harris County government today. And my granddaughter is named Elise Marie Brewster, and she's a second grader, a third grader at one of our local elementary schools.
Okay. Now, from your wife to your daughter to Elise, your granddaughter, do any of them do anything with the arts or anything related to the arts, writing, singing?
Yeah, Michelle and Naomi helped to organize the group that participates actively at Wheeler Avenue and many other African American churches here in Houston that focuses on the arts, African American art.
Okay.
And of course, Michelle was instrumental in organizing that group, which is still going. In fact, they just had an activity over at Wheeler Avenue about 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of different topics. We've talked about your life experience as a veteran. We've talked about the importance of communications and how youth could be benefit from furthering their education and developing their communication skills. And we've also talked about the arts. And so I want to definitely thank you for a wonderful interview. Is there anything else that you would like to leave with us?
Well, the one thing I'd like to leave is that, opportunity is still here for our young people to grow and develop, and that nutrition is important. I consider myself a nutritionist because I am a part of agriculture, and nutrition is agriculture. And one thing I'd like to leave with anyone who needs to know, if you had breakfast this morning, you are involved in agriculture, because agriculture is about science and chemistry, and that's about life.